My mother told the entire neighborhood I was moving home to nurse them, presenting me with a cleaning schedule the moment I walked in. I didn't argue. I just left, called Mrs. Higgins, and put my house on the market. They found out when the sign went up. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was running on fumes. That is the only way to describe the physical and mental state I was in when I pulled my car into the driveway of my parents' house that Sunday afternoon. It had been a grueling 6 weeks at work, launching a massive user experience overhaul for a fintech client that required 16-hour days, endless Zoom calls across 3 time zones, and a diet consisting entirely of lukewarm coffee and panic. I was a senior UX researcher, a job that paid incredibly well but demanded a piece of your soul in return during crunch times. I had barely slept in 48 hours. My skin felt tight and papery, my eyes were burning, and frankly, I just wanted my mom's roast chicken and a few hours of mind-numbing silence in the home I grew up in. I sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to muster the energy to unbuckle my seatbelt. I looked at the house, a pristine 2-story colonial that my parents, Martha and Albert, kept manicured to an inch of its life. It usually felt like a sanctuary, a place where time stood still. Today, however, there was an odd energy about it. The curtains in the front bay window twitched. I saw a shadow move. It was likely just my mother checking for my arrival, but in my heightened state of exhaustion, it felt predatory. I finally stepped out, the cool autumn air doing little to wake me up. I walked up the path, my boots clicking on the pavement, dragging my feet slightly. I was 32 years old, a homeowner, a successful professional, and yet, walking to that front door, I felt a strange regression, like I was a teenager coming home past curfew. I didn't even get to turn the knob. The door swung open before I could touch it. "She's here," my mother, Martha, announced, not to me but to the empty hallway behind her. She turned back to me, her smile tight, practiced, and lacking any genuine warmth. She wasn't wearing her usual Sunday apron. She was dressed in a stiff blazer and slacks, her hair coiffed into a helmet of hairspray. "Claire, you're late. We have a schedule to maintain." "Hi, Mom," I managed, my voice raspy. I stepped inside, dropping my purse on the entryway bench. "Sorry, traffic was a nightmare, and I had to send one last email before I left. I'm exhausted." "Well, get used to the traffic, dear," she said breezily, closing the door behind me with a decisive click. "Although, I suppose you won't be dealing with it much longer once you settle in." I paused, one boot halfway off. "What?" "Dinner is on the table," she said, ignoring my question and turning on her heel. "Your father is waiting. We have a lot to go over before the movers get here next week." My brain, sluggish and fogged with sleep deprivation, couldn't process the sentence. "Movers?" I followed her into the dining room, the smell of roast chicken turning my stomach rather than comforting it. My father, Albert, was seated at the head of the table, looking uncomfortable. He was a retired actuary, a man who had spent his life avoiding conflict by simply ceasing to exist in any room my mother occupied. He offered me a weak, apologetic smile. "Sit," Martha commanded, pointing to my usual chair, but there was something on the placemat. It wasn't a napkin or silverware. It was a clipboard. I stared at it. A laminated sheet of paper titled CLAIRES Daily Responsibilities, Draft 1, sat on top. "Mom, what is this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a rising, hot confusion. "We told the neighbors yesterday," Martha said, pouring herself a glass of iced tea with steady hands. "Mrs. Gable was asking about your little struggles in the city. I told her the good news, that you've finally decided to be sensible, give up that cramped rental of yours, and move back home to take care of us. It really is the best solution for everyone. We get the help we need around the house, and you get to save money and get back on your feet." I felt the blood drain from my face. My struggles, my rental. "Eat your potatoes, Claire," she said, cutting her meat with surgical precision. We can discuss the basement renovation after you've signed the agreement. The betrayal hit me harder than the exhaustion. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a narrative. A completely fabricated reality she had constructed and sold to the world while I was busy working myself to the bone. She hadn't asked me. She had told me. And looking at her calm, expectant face, I really. Zed, she genuinely believed I had no choice. I looked down at the clipboard again. The text swam before my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out at me, bold and demanding. 06:00 a.m. Prepare father's low-sodium breakfast. 08:00 a.m. 10:00 a.m. Deep clean ground floor, vacuuming, dusting baseboards. 12:00 p.m. Transport mother to Bridge Club Garden Club. 03:00 p.m. Grocery shopping and meal prep. 09:00 p.m. Lights out, power saving mode. This is a joke, I whispered, the paper crinkling under my grip. I looked up at my father. Dad, you know about this. Albert cleared his throat, his eyes darting to the centerpiece. Well, Claire, your mother, she feels that with her hip, and my blood pressure, it's getting harder to manage the big house. And we heard, he glanced at Martha, we heard things have been tough for you. Tough, I repeated, my voice rising. I just led a $2 million project. I was promoted last month. Who told you things were tough? Oh, stop it, Claire, Martha snapped, dropping her fork. The clatter echoed in the silent room. We know you're renting that tiny shoebox in the city. We know you don't have a husband to support you. Mrs. Gable said she saw your car parked at that discount grocery store 3 weeks ago. There's no shame in admitting you're failing, but there is shame in lying to your parents about it. I shop at Aldi because I'm frugal, Mom, not because I'm broke. I stood up, my chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. And I don't rent. I bought my house 3 years ago. You know this, you came to the housewarming. A bank owns that house, Claire, she waved a dismissive hand. And the payments must be drowning you. Why else would you be single at 32? You're clearly stressed. Look at you. You look terrible. You have bags under your eyes the size of suitcases. You need us. She took a sip of her tea, her eyes locking onto mine with a cold, terrifying certainty. I've already cleared out the basement. We moved your old twin bed down there. It's cozy. You won't be needing much space since you'll be busy with the house maintenance. I am not moving in here, I said, spacing out each word. I am not your maid. I am not your nurse. The neighbors expect you on Tuesday, Martha said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. I told them you'd be handling the fall festival committee on my behalf since I'm too fragile now. Don't you dare embarrass me, Claire. You are going to give notice at your apartment tomorrow, and you are going to come home where you belong. We raised you. You owe us this. My chest tightened. It was the same suffocation I had felt all through high school, the same crushing weight of her expectations and her rewriting of my reality to suit her needs. She didn't see a daughter. She saw a retirement plan. She saw a servant she could bully into submission because she thought I had nowhere else to go. She thought I was weak. She thought I was the same little girl who cried when she criticized my outfit. I looked at my father, begging for him to intervene, to be the parent I needed. He just took a bite of his potatoes and looked out the window. I picked up the clipboard. Martha smiled, thinking I was accepting my fate. Read it carefully, she advised. I'm very particular about how the baseboards are dusted. I looked her dead in the eye. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The exhaustion suddenly crystallized into a cold, hard clarity. No, I said softly. I dropped the clipboard onto the table. It landed on her plate, splashing gravy onto the pristine white tablecloth. Claire, she shrieked, jumping back. I'm leaving, I said. I turned and walked toward the door. If you walk out that door, Martha yelled, her voice losing its polished composure, don't expect us to be here when you come crawling back. You are ungrateful. You are selfish. You will lose that apartment and be on the street, and I won't lift a finger. I grabbed my purse. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness. They were shaking from the adrenaline of a bridge being incinerated. "Goodbye, Mother," I called out without looking back. I slammed the front door, the sound vibrating through my bones. I got into my car, locked the doors, and sat there for a full minute, breathing in the silence. My phone buzzed. It was a text from her. "Martha, you have until tomorrow morning to apologize and confirm the movers. Otherwise, I will tell everyone exactly what kind of daughter you really are." I stared at the screen. She thought her social circle was the ultimate court of law. She thought her gossip could destroy me. She thought she held all the cards because she assumed I was destitute and desperate. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't renting. I owned a 4-bedroom historic home in one of the most sought-after neighborhoods in the state, a home that had appreciated 30% in the last 2 years. And I didn't need our safety net. I had a parachute made of gold. To understand why this moment was so shattering, you have to understand the decade of silence I had endured. I wasn't a rebellious child. I was the fixer. When my brother, who had wisely moved to Australia 5 years ago, stopped calling, I was the one who went over every Sunday to fill the silence. When my father had his knee surgery, I was the one who took 2 weeks of FMLA leave to drive him to physical therapy, cook their meals, and listen to Martha complain that my cooking wasn't salty enough. I had spent my entire 20s trying to buy their love with service. I thought if I was successful enough, helpful enough, present enough, Martha would finally look at me and say, "Good job, Claire." But Martha didn't operate on a currency of love. She operated on control. She was a woman who viewed her children as extensions of her own vanity. If we were doing well, it was because of her parenting. If we were struggling, it was a personal slight against her reputation. But there was a sweet spot she loved most, when we were struggling just enough that we needed her, but not so much that we were embarrassing. She wanted us dependent. She was 65, though she told everyone she was 59. She was a homemaker who hadn't cleaned her own house in 20 years. Relying on a rotation of cleaning services, she would inevitably fire for incompetence after a month. She spent her days chairing committees for the local homeowners association, terrorizing the neighborhood with fines for grass that was a 1/4 inch too tall. And lately, her health complaints had become convenient. "Oh, my vertigo is acting up," she would say whenever the dishwasher needed unloading. "My arthritis is terrible today," she would moan when the garden needed weeding. Yet she could play 18 holes of golf on a Tuesday without a grimace. She could dance for 3 hours at a wedding. The frailty only appeared when work needed to be done. This new plan, the caretaker plan, was her masterpiece. I realized as I drove away from the house that this wasn't a sudden decision. She had been laying the groundwork for months, the hints about the house being too big, the questions about my finances that were disguised as concern. "Are you sure you can afford that heating bill, dear?" She had been waiting for a moment of weakness. And she thought she found it. She saw my exhaustion, my weight loss from the project stress, and my single status, and she constructed a reality where I was a failure who needed to come home. It was brilliant in a sick, twisted way. By telling the neighbors I was moving in, she locked me in socially. If I didn't move in, I wasn't just an independent adult. I was the cruel daughter abandoning her ailing parents after promising to help. She had weaponized her social circle against me. I pulled over into a gas station parking lot, my heart still hammering against my ribs. I needed to think. I needed to scream. But mostly, I needed to make sure she could never, ever try to claim ownership of my life again. I looked at my phone, another text from her. "Martha, Mrs. Gable just brought over a casserole for your welcome home dinner. I told her you were just running a quick errand. Don't make me a liar, Claire." She was doubling down. She was betting the house, literally, on my compliance. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins was the premier real estate agent in my city. She was a shark in a Chanel suit, a woman who could sell a haunted house to a ghost hunter for asking price. She was also the woman who had helped me buy my rental 3 years ago. I pressed call. It was Sunday evening, but sharks don't sleep. Claire, Mrs. Higgins' voice was crisp and warm. To what do I owe the pleasure? Please tell me you're finally ready to sell that investment property. The market is insane right now. I took a deep breath, watching the sun set over the gas station pumps. Not the investment property, Mrs. Higgins, I said, my voice steadying for the first time all day. I want to sell my primary residence, the Victorian. There was a pause on the line. Your home, Claire honey, you love that house, you just finished the kitchen. I know, I said, a tear finally escaping and rolling down my cheek. But I need to move far away, and I need to do it fast. Where are we talking? She asked, her tone shifting instantly to professional assessment. London, I said. The idea had been in the back of my head for months. My company had a UK office that was begging for senior researchers. I had been too afraid to leave my parents, too afraid to be too far away in case they needed me. London is lovely, Mrs. Higgins said. When do you want a list? Now, I said. Tonight. I want the sign in the yard tomorrow morning. And Mrs. Higgins. Yes. I need you to price it F. Or a bidding war. The silence of my house that Monday morning was a stark, beautiful contrast to the chaos Martha had tried to inflict upon me the night before. I woke up not to a generic alarm or a screaming mother, but to the soft, rhythmic hum of my own refrigerator and the pale gray light filtering through the linen curtains I had hand-selected 6 months ago. I lay in bed for 20 minutes, just breathing. My phone, which I had silenced the moment I drove away from my parents' driveway, was vibrating angrily on the nightstand. I didn't need to look at it to know what was happening. Martha would have moved from the helpful mother phase to the martyr phase and was likely currently transitioning into the vengeful deity phase. I finally picked it up, 53 notifications. 14 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Dad, 36 text messages. I scrolled through them, detached, as if reading a case study for a psychology class. Martha, 9:03 p.m., you are making a terrible mistake. I have already bought the special detergent for your sheets. Martha, 10:15 p.m., Dad is crying, I hope you're happy, you're killing him. Martha, 6:00 a.m., I'm coming over there at 9 a.m. to help you pack. Clearly, you are overwhelmed and not thinking straight. We will sort this out. I sat up, the cold dread in my stomach hardening into something useful, resolve. No, I said aloud to the empty room, you are not coming over. I didn't reply to her. Instead, I opened my laptop and dialed into the one call that actually mattered. David, I said when my boss's face popped onto the screen. He looked surprised to see me. I wasn't scheduled to be online for another 2 hours. Claire, everything okay? You look like you've slept about 3 hours, David said, leaning back in his chair. I thought you were taking a personal day after the launch. I am, I said, my voice steady. But I needed to talk to you first. Remember that transfer to the London office? The position in the Shoreditch branch leading the EMEA research team. David hesitated. Yeah, of course. We've been trying to fill that for 3 months. But you said you couldn't take it because of family obligations. My obligations have changed, I said. Is the offer still on the table? Claire, you're our top researcher. If you want it, it's yours. But the relocation package requires a minimum 2-year commitment. It's a big move. I know, I said. I can be on a plane in 2 weeks. I just need the paperwork sent over today. David paused, studying my face on the screen. He must have seen the desperation I was trying to hide, or perhaps the steely determination that had replaced it. Okay, I'll have HR express the DocuSign to you by noon. Welcome to London, Claire. I closed the laptop and exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty my lungs completely. I had done it. I had pulled the ripcord. But escaping Martha wasn't just about geography, it was about assets. She thought I was drowning in debt. She thought I was renting a shoebox. She relied on those lies to maintain her power over me. If I left without closing the loop, she would spend the next 10 years telling the neighbors I had fled the country to avoid my creditors. I needed to liquidate. At 10:00 a.m., Mrs. Higgins pulled into my driveway in her silver Mercedes. She stepped out, looking immaculate in a cream pantsuit, eyeing my front garden with professional approval. "The hydrangeas are coming in beautifully, Claire," she said as I opened the door. She walked in, her heels clicking on the hardwood I had refinished myself 2 summers ago. She looked around the living room, taking in the crown molding, the custom built-ins, the sheer value of the property. "You know, when you said you wanted to sell, I thought you were having a quarter-life crisis. But seeing the market data this morning, you're going to make a killing." "I need it moved fast, Mrs. Higgins," I said, leading her to the kitchen. "I'm not looking for top dollar if it means sitting on the market for 3 months. I want a bidding war, and I want to be in escrow in 10 days. Mrs. Higgins set her briefcase on the quartz island. "Honey, with the inventory this low and your school district, we list on Thursday, do an open house Sunday, and you'll have multiple offers over asking by Monday night. But I have to ask, does your mother know?" Mrs. Higgins knew Martha. Everyone in town knew Martha. Martha had once tried to get Mrs. Higgins fired from the garden club because she brought store-bought cookies to a fundraiser. "She thinks I rent," I said quietly. "She thinks I'm broke. She thinks I'm moving into her basement to be her maid." Mrs. Higgins paused, her hand hovering over her iPad. Her eyebrows shot up into her hairline. "Excuse me." "She's created this narrative that I'm a failure," I explained, the shame burning my cheeks. "She's telling everyone, if she finds out I'm selling Thai's place for a profit and moving to London, it destroys her story. She'll try to stop me." Mrs. Higgins' expression shifted from professional realtor to conspiratorial ally. A slow, shark-like smile spread across her face. "So, we need to be discreet with the signage." "No," I said, a dark satisfaction blooming in my chest. "Put the sign up. Put the biggest sign you have right in the front yard. Let her see it. Let her think the landlord is kicking me out. It'll only make her more confident." "And when she calls me?" Mrs. Higgins asked. "If she calls you," I said, "tell her nothing, until the ink is dry." "Understood," Mrs. Higgins said, tapping her screen. "Let's get this house sold." The sign went up on Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the enemy was at the gates. I was in the middle of packing my library, wrapping my collection of vintage sci-fi novels in bubble wrap, when I heard the aggressive pounding on the front door. It wasn't a knock, it was a demand. I froze. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. "Martha." She was standing on the porch, wearing her concerned mother face, eyebrows pinched, lips pursed, but her body language was pure aggression. She was peering into the side-light window, trying to see inside. I debated not answering, but if I didn't answer, she would call the police and claim I was suicidal. I had seen her do it to a neighbor once. I opened the door, but I stood in the frame, blocking her entry. "Claire," she pushed past me before I could speak, her shoulder checking mine with surprising force. She marched into the hallway, her eyes scanning the stacks of boxes I had lined up against the wall. "Thank God, you're packing." She let out a dramatic sigh of relief, placing a hand over her heart. "I was so worried when you didn't answer. I thought you were going to be stubborn and wait until the sheriff came to evict you." I closed the door slowly, turning to face her. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to supervise," she said, running a finger along the top of a box. "And to make sure you aren't bringing any junk. The basement is small, Claire. You can bring your clothes, obviously, but this," she gestured to my books. "We don't have room for dusty old books. You can donate them, or just leave them for the landlord to deal with." "I'm not leaving them," I said, my voice tight, "and I'm not moving into the basement." Martha laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves like sandpaper. "Oh, stop it. We've already discussed this. The neighbors know you're coming on Saturday. Mrs. Gable has already organized a meal train for us to help you settle in, since you'll be so busy with the cleaning schedule." She walked into the living room, looking around with a sneer. "God, this place is depressing. Why you wasted money painting these walls is beyond me, and that light fixture? Hideous. It's a good thing you're leaving. This place was never really you, was it? I chose that fixture, I said, stepping into the room, and I painted these walls. Well, it shows, she said dismissively. Now grab your coat, I need you to come with me to the pharmacy. My prescription is ready and my knee is just killing me today. You can drive. It'll be good practice for next week. She turned back to me, expecting compliance. She expected the slumped shoulders, the resigned sigh, the nod of the head. She expected the daughter she had trained to be a servant. Instead, I crossed my arms. No. The word hung in the air between us. Martha blinked, her smile faltering. Excuse me. I'm not driving you to the pharmacy, I said. I have a lot of work to do, and I am not moving into your basement on Saturday. Claire, she said, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper. Do not test me. I know you're embarrassed. I know it's hard to admit you failed, but playing hard to get isn't going to change the facts. You have no money, you have no home, you have nowhere else to go. I have a job, I said, a very good job. A job that clearly doesn't pay enough to keep a roof over your head. She snapped, gesturing to the window where the for sale sign was visible. The sign is in the yard, Claire. You're being evicted. Stop lying to me. That sign doesn't mean I'm being evicted, I said, the anger finally bubbling over, hot and sharp. It means I'm selling. I own this house, Mom. I've owned it for 3 years. And I'm selling it because I'm moving to London. Martha froze. She stared at me, her brain trying to process the information and rejecting it instantly because it didn't fit her narrative. London, she repeated, as if I had said I was moving to Mars. Don't be ridiculous. You can't even afford rent in this suburb. How are you going to live in London? I was transferred, I said, enjoying the look of confusion on her face. My company is moving me. They're paying for everything. And when this house sells, I'll have a very healthy nest egg. So N. Oh, I won't be dusting your baseboards. I won't be driving you to Bridge Club. I'm going to be living in Europe. Martha's face went through a complex series of contortions. Shock, then denial, then pure, unadulterated rage. You're lying, she spat. You're making this up to hurt me. You're just like your brother, selfish, delusional. I have the plane ticket, Mom, I said calmly. I leave in 2 weeks. She stared at me for a long moment, breathing heavily. Then, a mask slammed down over her face. The rage vanished, replaced by a cold, pitying smile. Oh, Claire, she said softly, shaking her head. You really are sick, aren't you? London, a transfer, you've clearly had a breakdown. This is just a fantasy you've concocted to cope with the shame of losing your apartment. She walked back to the door. I'm going to go home and call Dr. Evans. He's a friend of the family. He can probably get you a referral for a psychiatric evaluation. We can't have you flying off to Europe in the middle of a manic episode. Get out, I whispered. I'll see you on Saturday, Claire, she said, opening the door. And don't worry, we'll tell the neighbors you're just confused. We'll keep your little London story between us. She slammed the door. I stood there, shaking. She didn't believe me. Or rather, she refused to believe me because the truth was too inconvenient. She was going to spin this. She was going to tell everyone I was insane. The smear campaign began before her car even left my street. By Thursday, I had received texts from 3 cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Cousin Sarah, hey Claire, just heard from Aunt Martha about what you're going through. Just want you to know there's no shame in seeking mental help. We love you. Uncle Bob, Claire, please listen to your mother. She only wants what's best. Don't run away. She was nuking my reputation. She was painting me as unstable, manic, and incompetent. She was telling the family I was having a breakdown and creating delusions of grandeur about a fake job in London to hide my financial ruin. It was a masterclass in triangulation. If I tried to defend myself, I would look defensive and manic, confirming her story. If I stayed silent, her story stood as truth. But her desperation exposed something else. Why was she fighting this hard? Why was she so terrified of me not coming home? It wasn't just about the chores. Martha was lazy, sure, but she was also cheap. I decided to do a little digging of my own. I still had the login information for my parents' joint email account from when I had set up their iPad 2 years ago. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but they were currently trying to have me committed, so I figured all bets were off. I logged in and started scrolling. I ignored the Bridge Club newsletters and the political spam. I went straight to the sent folder. I found an email chain from 3 weeks ago with a staffing agency. Subject: replacement for Maria. Agency rep: Mrs. Peterson, as we discussed, we cannot send another aide to your home. Maria filed a formal complaint regarding verbal abuse and unreasonable working conditions. You also have an outstanding balance of $3,400 for the last 2 months of service. Martha's reply: Maria was incompetent and a thief. I am not paying for subpar service. Besides, my daughter is moving back in next month to take over full-time, so cancel your contract immediately. My jaw dropped. It wasn't just that they wanted a maid. They had driven away the professionals, owed money, and had literally fired the agency based on the assumption that I would fill the role for free. I kept digging. I found a folder marked Travel. Inside was a booking confirmation. The Royal Caribbean World Cruise, 120 days, departure, November 15th. The cost was astronomical. It was nearly $40,000. I pieced it together instantly. They weren't frail. They weren't sick. They were planning to go on a 4-month luxury cruise, but they couldn't leave the house unattended for that long without paying a house sitter, and they needed someone to manage their affairs, pay the bills, and maintain the property while they drank mimosas in the Mediterranean. That was the caretaker role. I wasn't moving in to nurse them. I was moving in to be their free property manager so they could blow my inheritance on a cruise. And they needed my rent money, which they assumed I would pay them to live in the basement, to cover the final installment of the ticket price. I printed everything: the emails with the agency, the cruise confirmation, the unpaid invoices. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't fear. It was the cold, hard fury of a woman who realizes she has been nothing but a line item in a spreadsheet to the people who were supposed to love her. On Friday, Mrs. Higgins called me. "Claire, we have a situation," she said, her voice unusually grave. "What is it? Did the listing not go live?" "Oh, it went live," Mrs. Higgins said. "And your mother found it. She just called me." My stomach clenched. What did she say? "She didn't identify herself as your mother at first," Mrs. Higgins said. "She called the number on the sign. She pretended to be a neighbor. She told me that the tenant at this property, you, has completely trashed the interior. She said there is extensive water damage you're hiding, that the foundation is cracked, and that there was a meth lab in the basement last year." I gasped. "She what?" "She's trying to sabotage the sale, Claire," Mrs. Higgins said. "She thinks if she scares off the buyers, the landlord will evict you without a deposit, and you'll have nowhere to go but home. She explicitly asked if the landlord was planning to sue the tenant for damages." "What did you tell her?" I asked, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles turned white. "I let her finish," Mrs. Higgins said, her voice turning icy. "And then I asked her, 'Is this Martha Peterson?' She went silent. I told her, 'Mrs. Peterson, I am the listing agent. I have walked this property myself. I know there is no meth lab, and I know there is no landlord.'" And then I dropped the bomb," Mrs. Higgins said with satisfaction. "I told her, Claire is the sole owner of this property. She is listing it for $850,000. And considering we already have 3 preemptive offers, she is going to walk away with nearly $500,000 in cash. So, unless you want to be sued for tortious interference with a business contract, I suggest you stop calling my office." Silence hung on the line for a second. "What did she say?" I whispered. "She hung up," Mrs. Higgins said. "But Claire, she knows now, she knows you have the money. She knows you have the power, and people like Martha, they don't take that well. No, I said, looking at the printed cruise tickets on my desk. She's going to come for me. She needs that money for her cruise. She's going to try one last Hail Mary. The open house is Sunday, Mrs. Higgins said. Do you want me to cancel it? No, I said firmly. Keep it. In fact, make sure it's packed. I'm going to be there. Claire, usually the seller isn't present during an open house. I know, I said, but my parents will be there. I guarantee it. They're going to come to make a scene. They're going to try to shame me back into submission in front of everyone. And what are you going to do? Mrs. Higgins asked. I looked at the stack of evidence on my desk. I'm going to let them, I said, and then I'm going to bury them. Sunday arrived with the crisp, golden clarity of an autumn afternoon, the kind of weather real estate agents would pray to pagan gods for. My house looked spectacular. Mrs. Higgins had staged it to perfection. The smell of freshly baked vanilla cookies, real ones, not the store-bought kind Martha despised, wafted through the open windows. I stood in the kitchen, dressed not in the sweatpants of a defeated daughter moving back home, but in a tailored navy dress that screamed executive. I watched the security feed on Mrs. Higgins' iPad. The street was lined with cars. People were already walking up the path. It's a zoo out there, Mrs. Higgins said, adjusting a vase of tulips. I have 3 couples already asking about the escalation clause. You realize you might get 50 over asking, right? I don't care about the money, I said, my eyes fixed on a familiar sedan pulling up to the curb, double parking aggressively behind a potential buyer's BMW. I just care about the show. Martha and Albert stepped out of the car. Martha was dressed for war. She wore her church leadership suit, a severe gray tweed number, and she was marching up the walk with a speed that miraculously defied her alleged arthritis. Albert trailed behind her, looking confused and weary, holding a casserole dish covered in foil. I moved to the living room, standing by the fireplace, anchoring myself. The front door opened. The foyer was already crowded with 2 young couples and a family touring the home. Martha shoved her way through them, not excusing herself. Excuse me, she announced loudly, her voice projecting to the back of the room. Please, watch your step. The floorboards in the hallway are rotted. We haven't had time to fix them yet. The room went silent. The young couple near the door looked down at their feet in alarm. Mrs. Higgins stepped forward, her smile tight but professional. Mrs. Peterson, she said, her voice steel wrapped in velvet. Welcome. As I told you on the phone, the inspection report is pristine. The floors are solid oak, installed last year. Martha ignored her. She scanned the room until her eyes locked on me. She didn't look like a mother seeing her daughter. She looked like a general seeing a deserter. Claire, she exclaimed, rushing over and placing a hand on my forehead, playing tea. Oh, the audience. Oh, honey, look at you, you're feverish. I told you this was too much stress. You're confused. She turned to the room, addressing the stunned buyers. I am so sorry, everyone. My daughter is having a difficult time. This listing is a mistake. She's not actually selling. She's in the middle of a severe mental health episode, and we're taking her home to get the care she needs. Please, you can all go. The open house is canceled. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw the doubt creeping into their eyes. This was her power, the ability to sound so reasonable, so concerned that reality bent around her. Dad, I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. I didn't look at Martha. I looked straight at my father, who was standing by the door, still holding the casserole, looking mortified. Dad, put the casserole down. Claire, maybe we should just go outside and talk, Albert mumbled, his eyes darting around the room. No, I said, stepping away from Martha's touch. We are going to talk right here. I turned to the room. I am the owner of this property. I am of sound mind. I am a senior UX researcher for a Fortune 500 company, and next week I am transferring to our London headquarters. My mother is lying to you because she is trying to force me to move into her basement to be her unpaid servant. Oh, Claire, stop it. Martha laughed, a frantic, high-pitched sound. She's delusional. The London job is a fantasy. She's broke. Am I? I reached behind me, onto the mantel, and picked up the folder I had prepared. Then, why did Mrs. Higgins just receive a verified proof of funds from my bank showing exactly how solvent I am? I took a step toward Martha. The crowd parted. You told the neighbors I was broke, I said, my voice rising, steady and resonant. You told them I was a failure. You told them I was struggling so you could play the savior. But that wasn't enough, was it? You needed me desperate, because you fired Maria. Martha's face went pale. I didn't fire Maria, she quit. I have the emails, Mom. I held up the printout. I have the email where you called the agency, refused to pay the $3,000 you owed them, and told them to cancel the contract because, and I quote, my daughter is moving back in next month to take over full-time. I looked at my father. Did you know that, Dad? Did you know she fired the aide because she planned on me doing it for free? Albert looked at Martha, his expression shifting from embarrassment to shock. Martha, you told me the agency went bankrupt. She lied, Dad, I continued, relentless. Just like she lied about why she needs me there. She's not sick, she's not frail, she needs a house sitter. I pulled out the second piece of paper, the cruise confirmation. The Royal Caribbean World Cruise, I read aloud. Departing November 15th, 4 months, first-class stateroom, total cost $38,400. The room gasped. I wasn't imagining it. A legitimate gasp went through the potential buyers. You can't afford that ticket on your pension, can you? I asked, staring her down. That's why you needed me in the basement. You were going to charge me rent to live in my own childhood home, weren't you? My rent was going to pay off the final installment of your vacation while I scrubbed your toilets and mowed your lawn. Martha was trembling now. Her narrative was disintegrating in real time. She looked around for an ally, but the neighbors, Mrs. Gable was actually standing in the foyer, having wandered in, were looking at her with open mouths. You ungrateful little brat, Martha hissed, dropping the facade entirely. Her face twisted into a snarl. After everything I did for you, we raised you, you owe us. You are selfish. You are leaving your parents to rot while you run off to Europe. I am not leaving you to rot, I said calmly. I am leaving you to live the life you can actually afford. If you want a caretaker, hire one, but you won't be using me. I turned to my father. He was staring at the cruise receipt in my hand, then at Martha. He looked like a man waking up from a 30-year coma. Martha, Albert said, his voice surprisingly deep. You booked the world cruise. You told me we were just going to visit your sister in Florida. It was a surprise, Albert, she snapped. I was handling it. With Claire's money, Albert asked, by turning our daughter into a servant. She has plenty of money, Martha screamed, gesturing at my house. Look at this place. She can afford to help us. She's selfish. No, Albert said. He set the casserole dish down on a pristine white ottoman. It made a dull thud. She's not selfish, we are. He looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. Claire, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know she fired Maria. I didn't know about the cruise. I know, Dad, I said softly. Get in the car, Albert, Martha commanded, sensing she was losing Con. Trawl of her primary asset. We are leaving. Clearly, Claire is having a breakdown and needs space. No, Albert said. Martha froze. Excuse me. I said no. Albert straightened his spine. He looked at Mrs. Higgins. Ma'am, is this house still for sale? Mrs. Higgins nodded slowly. It is. Good, Albert said, because my daughter deserves every penny. He turned to Martha. I'm not going on the cruise, Martha, and I'm not going home with you right now. I'm going to stay and help Claire pack. You can't, Martha shrieked. You can't leave me, my hip. Your hip is fine, Albert said, his voice flat. You played tennis on Tuesday. I saw the racket in the trunk. Martha stood there, stripped of her lies, stripped of her power, surrounded by strangers who now knew exactly who she was. She looked small. She looked pathetic. Fine, she yelled, turning on her heel. Fine, be miserable, both of you, see if I care. She stormed out of the house. The front door slammed. Silence descended on the room for a heartbeat. Then, Mrs. Higgins cleared her throat. Well, she said to the room at large, clapping her hands together. As you can see, the seller is highly motivated and the title is clear. Who wants to see the primary suite? The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely satisfying. My house didn't just sell, it sparked a frenzy. Mrs. Higgins was right. The drama at the open house seemed to make the property more legendary rather than less. I accepted an all-cash offer for $60,000 over the asking price from a young architect who loved the energy of the place. We closed in 9 days. Martha, on the other hand, found her social credit score bankrupt. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had witnessed the entire meltdown, was the town gossip. By Monday evening, the entire bridge club, the garden committee, and the HOA board knew that Martha Peterson had faked her ailments, fired her help, and tried to enslave her successful daughter to fund a secret luxury cruise. The caregiver narrative she had built crumbled. She wasn't the pitiable mother of a wayward daughter. She was the villain of the subdivision. She resigned from the Fall Festival Committee for health reasons, but everyone knew it was because nobody would sit next to her at the meetings. But the biggest change was Albert. He didn't divorce her. They were of a generation that simply didn't do that, but he did something better. He retired from being her enabler. 3 days before my flight to London, I met my father for dinner at a steakhouse downtown, just the two of us. He looked tired but lighter, as if he had put down a heavy backpack he'd been carrying for decades. She canceled the cruise, he told me, cutting his steak. Lost the deposit too, she's furious. I bet she is, I said, taking a sip of red wine. How is it at home? Quiet, he said. I hired the agency back. Not Maria, she wouldn't come back, but a new girl. And I told Martha that if she fires her, I'm moving into a condo. I think she believes me this time. He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was rough and warm. I'm sorry, Claire, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I let it happen. For years, I wanted peace. I let her rewrite history because it was easier than fighting her. But when I saw you standing there in your living room, fighting that whole room of people just to be heard, I realized I had failed you. You're here now, Dad, I said, squeezing his hand. That's what matters. London, he mused, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. You know, I've always wanted to see the British Museum. You should come, I said. I'll have a guest room, a real one, not a basement. He laughed. I might just take you up on that, once the dust settles. The day I left was overcast, a typical gray autumn day. I stood at the gate in the airport, my passport in one hand, my boarding pass in the other. I looked at my phone one last time. There was a text from Martha. Martha, I hope you're happy. The neighbors are still whispering. If you want to make this right, you can send a check for the cruise deposit you made me lose. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel guilt, I just felt done. I didn't reply, I didn't block her, I just deleted the thread. I walked down the jetway, the wheels of my carry-on gliding smoothly over the carpet. I wasn't running away. I wasn't escaping. I was ascending. I had my career. I had my money. I had my dignity. And as the plane lifted off the tarmac, banking over the city that had tried to keep me small, I looked down at the sprawling suburbs one last time. Somewhere down there, in a pristine colonial house, Martha was probably dusting her own baseboards, waiting for a daughter who was never coming back. I ordered a champagne from the flight attendant. What's the occasion? She asked kindly as she poured the sparkling liquid. I clinked my glass against the coaster and smiled. Freedom, I said, pure, unadulterated freedom.